alternative fuel, and we will see that number, just to be honest, we will see that number drop off in this year and the next year a little bit, because there was large grant efforts that were available between 2006 and 2008, I believe, through the state of Kansas, where a lot of hybrid Ford Escapes and things like that were purchased. Those are now falling off of the replacement cycles. Those fund assistance dollars are not there any longer, so it's, again, a challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Butler, last week we talked a little bit more in depth about this. I just, again, wanted to commend you for how you've stepped up our game in terms of the management and operations of the fleet, and I really appreciated the analytical analysis that you've done and projected for the effective and efficient use of resources for the acquisition of vehicles. And if you haven't had a chance, I would encourage you to share it with the other commissioners. For some of us old-timers who've been here for a while, it's a big change. So, not that you're that old, Mr. Chairman.
Why are you looking at me? Jim, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Butler, thank you. I have no problem with this proposal. Just a general question. Last week you had a brief discussion about departments that are not under your control on replacement vehicles. I wondered if it'd be possible maybe to get a report from, I believe it's Park and Rec, Library, Sheriff's Department, that I understand don't go through you to purchase their vehicles.
Get a report from myself on.
Well, I'm just trying to figure the number of vehicles that maybe they purchase, and maybe look at that number first and then see if that's something the board at a future date maybe would like to take a look at.
And airports, Mr.
Whatever departments that don't go through you to replace them. I think you do an excellent job, and my opinion, I'd like to see, if possible, the organization in total go through fleet services for replacement vehicles. But till I see those numbers and what we're talking about, I asked a question last week at the library and was told they only had 10 vehicles, which seemed pretty low to me. But anyway, I'd like to get an idea where we're at on these different departments and to see if it's worth our while to investigate that.
Okay, outstanding.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? There's no one to be heard. It's back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Mr. Allen?
I'd move to authorize the purchases of various fleet vehicles and equipment from competitively scheduled contracts in an amount not to exceed $3,164,581.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the purchase as noted. Any further questions or discussion? Not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Are there any other items?
No, sir.
Turning to reports and communications, Ms. Postoke-Ferguson.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Several items in your report this week. First, the Arts Council of Johnson County, they have given you their quarterly update. It's a one-pager, but it does highlight a veteran storytelling project and some other things, and they wanted to share that with you as a key stakeholder. The second item is congratulations that we are named as the healthiest county in Kansas again by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So congratulations, Public Health Department announced that this week. So big congratulations there. They look at a number of factors. So some of it is, the first thing that they highlight is that we're ranked in the state for health outcomes such as a low number of premature deaths, life lost before age 75. The county also ranked #1 for health factors such as access to medical and dental care, exercise opportunities, and healthy food environment. And the more details are attached as well. So congratulations. Next is the SERI report, and it's the first month of the year. So I will highlight 3.2% unemployment rate for January. The other information is in your packet, but with one year so far, or 1 month so far, not highlighting much more unless you have questions on that. The City of DeSoto will conduct a public hearing on April 18th to consider approving the Commerce Park TIF District, generally located just east of the intersection of Lexington Avenue and Commerce Drive. And that will include retail supplier, national restaurant establishment, local retail, and professional office uses. The information, again, is in your packet. And the City of Lenexa will conduct a public hearing on April 16th to consider adopting TIF Project Plan 4, generally located at the northwest corner of Britton Street and 99th Street. And that's adjacent to the property that's the Ridgeview Road that's being constructed right now. So again, that information, more details are in your packet. And two other items that are not on the memo. I did just want to piggyback on the recognition earlier on World Down Syndrome Day to celebrate. So one thing that wasn't explained this morning, and many of you may know, but 321 is because those with Down syndrome, trisomy 21, is you have a third chromosome of the 21st chromosome. So I wanted to explain that and just say Happy World Down Syndrome Day to honor my daughter as well. And I know Commissioner Fast and Ronnie and I have things in common with family members with Down syndrome, and we love them, and many of you have met them. So wanted to point that out as well. And then the last item I wanted to, you have at your places an item that we would like to add next week on the 21st to a consent to assignment of contract by Springstead to Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. And we would like to add that with your consent to next week's agenda for action on the 28th. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay. When we come to agenda review, we'll take up that item.
Okay, very good.
Any questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Postock-Ferguson, question about the health rankings. It wasn't clear to me, and I'm happy Johnson County is #1 in the state, but I was wondering, is there any indication or any information regarding the overall standing, or are we getting better over time, or are we staying about the same, or are we, heaven forbid, declining?
I don't have that information, but I think the health department does. Do you have it? Oh, she's here. Very good. Can you come forward, please? Mary Beverly, she's the Deputy Director for Health and Environment. She could probably answer that question.
Thank you. Yes, sir, we have consistently been #1 for several years, and you'll have to accept my apology. I am new to the area, but I do believe for at least the last 6 to 10 years, I mean, we've been #1. I do want to note, though, that we do have areas of disparity in our county, and housing is something that, United Community Services and the Health Department are looking at, cost of living and things like that. But we have done well in this county, and it's something to celebrate.
Okay.
Well, but to clarify, I know we're #1, but I was reading a study that nationally, health in general is declining, and I was just wondering, are we declining also, or are we bucking the trend in relative to our peers getting better? I mean, that's what I was trying to understand.
Sure. Well, I would say nationally, we have things we need to be concerned about. Your zip code can dictate your health more sometimes than things like physical activity and access to health care. Housing is very important in that regard. And in this report, we have some national experts that are actually saying that some Americans are paying more than 50% towards their home price, towards their mortgage and rent. And so what that does is it creates a problem with people getting access to healthy food, having the ability to get, good, adequate exercise, having the ability to afford to pay for your medical expenses. So this is a national trend that housing prices can drive health in general. And the zip code that you live in, there may be high crime rates, et cetera, that contribute to safety and those kind of things, and addiction, et cetera.
Well, if you could take a look at the data and let us know at some point in the future whether our trend is going up, whether it's flat or going down, that would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else? That's it?
Nothing further,
Okay,
thank you.
Cindy Green, legislative update.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chairman. Cindy Green, County Manager's Office with your legislative report. We are into the final weeks of the session, which is kind of hard to believe this year. So they're working hard on a lot of bills this week because they've got to have them out of non-exempt committees by tomorrow. And then next week, they're going to be on the floor Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we will have another large report next week. The big news is a couple of big items this week going on. First, the mega tax bill is still on the governor's desk to be signed. It was just presented to her on March 19th, which was Tuesday, and so she's got 10 days to sign it, veto it, or allow it just to become law without a signature. So we should know something probably in the next week on that one. The other big news is yesterday in the House on the floor, House Bill 2066, which was, the language in it was in regards to advancing the practice of registered nurses. And they made an amendment into it and basically did a gut and go and put the Medicaid expansion language in it. The amendment was ruled non-germane, but then the House overrode the Rules Committee on a vote of 62 to 55, so the decision was made that they could place it in that bill. In this bill, the federal government would pick up 90% of the financing of it, and 10% would come from the state. There were 2 amendments that were placed in the bill. One of them was that KDHE would charge each person enrolled in it a $25 monthly fee up to a max of $100 per family household. They also put in a provision that would the state would start shutting down the expansion within days if the federal government drops below their 90% threshold of funding that. The bill went on after long debates on the floor yesterday, and there were several other amendments that were attempted that failed, but they also then forwarded it on with a vote of 70 to 54, but it actually goes to final vote today. So we will know today if those numbers stand. I kind of analyzed our numbers in our delegation, and we were split with a 13 to 12 vote on making it germane so that we could move forward with debating it and or passing it as a bill. So we've got kind of a split delegation up there. So this is one of our top priorities this year. So I was happy to see that they found a way to get that to the House floor. In regards to the Senate, they did pass their education bill last Thursday. And the House is also working on a separate one in their committee. So we've got some education things going on. Senate Transportation had some hearings on toll roads, and they did not come out of committee yet. And then Senate Ways and Means, wait, I take that back. They did get a bill out. Senate Bill 192 was substituted into House Bill 2007. There's a lot of that going on this time of year where they're gutting and going on bills. So that is sitting in the Senate. The House Ways and Means Committee is looking at putting together their mega budget and working on things, but they haven't finalized it yet. They also, last week, they finalized their hearings on House Bill 2084, which is the 911 Act, but has not taken any action on it. Senate Transportation, they had a hearing and worked a number of different bills, but none of them came out of committee, so we'll wait and discuss those if they do. And then Senate Ways and Means had a bill that provided CAPERS memberships to support people in the Developmental Disability Organization after a 2-year training period. That did pass out of their committee. And then they also worked a bill, Senate Bill 190, which is we currently have an ad valorem tax that we should be getting. We've not gotten it since 2004, but they're talking about funding part of that and then us making requests to KDOT to get that funding for some road and construction projects. It's not passed out of committee. There's a lot of confusion on how that would work if they funded too many projects, or could one city come and get it all, one county, those types of things. So there's still some things they need to fine tune in that. Senate tax actually worked Senate Bill 91, but then the chairwoman, it wasn't the chairwoman, but Senator Lynn put a hold on it coming out of committee, and this was the homestead property tax freeze. And so we're still keeping an eye on that because we're not wild about a brand new program, but would prefer they just expand what they have. And then Senate tax also worked on Senate Bill 191, which was the tax lid exemption for the construction projects. But it too has not come out of committee. One question that was asked during that I think's just interesting for you guys to know too is that they wanted to know how many cities or counties had an election last year and how many of them passed or not. There were actually 4 communities that had such elections and only 1 failed. So there was talk in the committee that maybe we really don't need this because nobody's having to go to a vote of the people because they're not bumping up to their lids. So, and then Senate Commerce, they're working still on House Bill 2006, and that was the act in regards to commerce creating the database, and that is still being worked and didn't come out of committee. Interestingly enough, in the House committees, the Farm Bureau bill, which had gotten quite a bit of action, was stalled in committee and doesn't look like that's going to come out because they put an amendment on it that a lot of people didn't like. House committee hearings, they had several on regards to taxes. They had one in restricting the distribution of certain property taxes under penalty. We are not wild about that because of the complexity that it creates within holding funds and then redistributing at a later date. They also talked about permitting fees for oversized vehicles, increasing that, and then increasing registration fees for the electric cars. Finally, in House tax, they had a hearing on House Bill 2116, and this is in regards to BOTA being able to have hearings on audio or video for the people to be able to not have to drive all the way to Topeka if they're out in western Kansas. KAC also provided testimony, and one of their recommendations to be not just that the person could do it, but even the city or the county wouldn't have to drive all the way here for the hearings, that we could figure out a way to do that electronically. House Election Committee forwarded out Senate Bill 130, and this is permitting people that have an advance ballot to correct a signature deficiency. And they also then added into that Senate Bill 129, which allows voters to vote at any polling location within a county approved by the county election officer. So those 2 bills should be going over to the House floor. And then House Transportation, they working on a bill 2372 that creates a transportation planning program, and House Appropriations is working on their appropriations bill, and some good news on it, because last week I told you some of that money was stripped out for the IDD population. They ended up putting the 2% back in for the HCBS provider rate, and then they had $2.5 million that would go towards reducing the waiting list, and then $12.4 million for the protected income. So we were happy to see those get put back in. So that is my long report for this week, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Green, as always, a very good report. Question, though, on the memorandum we received from the Federico firm. It reads kind of like boilerplate, and I was just wondering if you had any more information or could obtain some more information related to the fiscal note in the mega tax bill sent to Governor on the impact that this bill would have on the internet sales tax portion and the sales tax on food, if it would have any, and how much that would be. And I would appreciate, and for Johnson County is what I'm referring to.
Well, I doubt that it's going to have specific Johnson County. I can ask staff if they can back it out, because I think all the reports had what the statewide number was, but we'll look at backing that out and see what we can
Well,
find.
I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Since we're a pretty big dog in that calculation, I'd like to know.
Okay, be
All
happy
right,
to do that.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Cindy. Moving to commission comments, Ms. Fast.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to report today.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I appreciated the comments by you and the county manager regarding Down Syndrome's Day. It's an important recognition, and Johnson County has always been very cognizant of those issues and very supportive of that population and the IDD population generally. So thank you for that, sir.
Mr. Allen?
I just second Commissioner Ashcraft's comments.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. I have several items. First item, Gold Star Family Memorial. the work continues toward fundraising through Olathe Parks and Rec. We are getting ever closer to reaching our goal of funding, and there will be a check presentation from the Kansas City Veterans Employment Coalition on Monday, the 25th of March at 2 p.m. at the Old Navy Park in Olathe at Harrison and 56 Highway, where they'll be presenting a check to the Memorial Fund for $2,000. So I'm excited to be a part of that and be there for that. That gets us ever closer to our goal. Earlier this week, I had a meeting with the Small Business Administration Administrator, Linda McMahon, with a roundtable group where we discussed issues relative to small business and trade as those relate to the intermodal. It was a great conversation and enjoyed having her here and introducing her to some people that I had gathered and that I know. Yesterday, I met with Fire District Number 1 and their staff in their boardroom where they laid out their plans for the coming year relative to Fire District Number 1. It is always great to be with those folks. It is a great team. They have solid leadership, and they have top flight outcomes, and they get ever better as we go along, and I couldn't be more proud of them. Let's see. I am hearing from constituents that our wait times at our DMV offices are rising. It is important to me that that does not happen. We got enough problems in working with the state on driver's licenses and slowdowns. I do not want to see our wait times increase at our DMVs. That is, there's just, I'm very frustrated by that.
So have you visited with Mr. Franzen?
Yes, and I'm waiting for a reply back to an email from him now.
Thank you.
And then just a comment. In Ms. Green's report, she reported that there were 13 members of the Johnson County delegation from our Kansas House of Representatives that voted to override the rules and also voted to support expansion of Medicaid in Kansas. I want to point out that many of those 13, as recently as February of this year, were quoted in the Kansas City Star that a gut-and-go procedure, transparency, making sure that the public knows exactly what they're doing and why, that was an absolute hallmark priority for them. Yet they voted for a gut-and-go. They substituted non-germane information into a bill, and then they ran it through and they passed it. That is exactly 180 degrees out of phase with what they said they wanted, what they said they were going to do, and clearly situational ethics is alive and well, along with hypocrisy in Topeka. Thank you.
Ms. Hansley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wanted to had a couple comments. One is I want to recognize a couple of retirements in our Department of Corrections. Tony Booker and Sharon Brown, who together have about 60 years of experience between them with the Department of Corrections, are retiring. And I've been fortunate enough to work with both of them, and they are truly representative of the outstanding staff that we have here in Johnson County and with our corrections department. So I know I will miss them very much, and I wish them all the best in their future. I also wanted to mention that I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with Robbie Makinen. He is the Executive Director of the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, and very excited about his vision for Metro Transit in this area, and look forward to being able to work with him to realize that vision here in Johnson County. And finally, I wanted to thank the Meals on Wheels. I had the chance to do a ride along with them this week, and it was a very wonderful thing to do, but it also is a reminder of the vulnerable people that we have living here in our community that need and depend on those services just for their daily life. So I was so impressed with the program, and am committed to continuing to help those vulnerable folks. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. 2 or 3 things. We do have a study session which has been scheduled for 10:30 a.m. this morning. It may occur a little later in rooms 202, 204. 2 subjects, the priorities from our retreat, and then also an update from the Sheriff's Office. Saturday this week, the legislative breakfast at the Doubletree, sponsored by the Chamber Public Policy Committee. I think that begins at 7:30 a.m. And then March 26th, you certainly don't want to miss this, State of the County Report at the Embassy Suites in Olathe, beginning at 11:30 a.m. And then that same evening at 5 p.m., we'll have the joint meeting of our board with JCDS Board at the Elmore Center. So that concludes our agenda. We are adjourned from our business session. We'll come back after a short break for agenda review. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Whenever you're ready, Linda. We'll get one more anyway. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for the purpose of agenda review for next week's business session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Fast is in the building. Commissioner Allen?
Here.
Commissioner Kleka is absent. Commissioner Hanslick?
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Here.
Commissioner Brown is in the building, and Chairman Eilert.
Here. We do have a quorum present. Would the clerk please read the consent agenda item is the minutes, is that correct?
Yes, consider approving the March 7th, 2019 business session minutes.
That will stay on consent. Next item.
Item number 2, consider authorizing the expenditure of $135,890 by the Johnson County Airport Commission for the purchase of 2 tractors from Can Equip Incorporated, utilizing a cooperative contract through a Sourcewell Cooperative Number 021815-CNH agreement.
Mr. Otto, any comments you'd like to make?
Good morning, Aaron Otto with the Airport Commission. Thank you for humoring us. Yes, we're an airport, and yes, we're buying tractors, but airports have a lot of grass to mow. In these cases, these are 2 tractors that were purchased in 2001. They've exceeded their service life very well, and it's time we Now, thanks to you last year helping us put an equipment fund into place, we're in a position where we can try to smooth out some of these purchases and put together a good equipment plan for the future. So these are two tractors largely used for mowing at the airports, at both airports, and we ask for your permission. We're here because the purchase policy requires that if you spend more than $100,000, even if it's on a cooperative agreement, it comes before the Board of County Commissioners for approval.
Okay, questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have no objection if this goes on consent, but I was wanting maybe Mr. Otto before next week could share with me a little bit about Sourcewell Cooperative. I'm just not familiar with that, and it's just kind of an informational thing.
Sure.
All right, it'll go on consent. Next item.
Thank you.
Item number 3, resolution number 010-19. Consider City of Gardner application number Z-18-07, a rezoning of 1.97 acres from M2 General Industrial District to M1 Restricted Industrial District to allow for on-site retail sales at 1000 East Santa Fe, Gardner, Kansas.
Mr. Leipzig?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig, Planning Director. This item is for a City of Gardner application to rezoning from general industrial to restricted industrial, basically to allow retail sales, a minor component of retail sales. The property is located within 1 mile of the Johnson County New Century Airport. It was approved by the City of Gardner on February the 18th, 2019, and as well as the Airport Commission, which approved this item on February 27th, 2019.
Okay, and the staff's in agreement?
Yes, that is correct,
Okay.
sir.
Any questions? All right, this is a planning item, will remain on action. Next item.
Item number 4, application number SW-PP/FP-3446 GA, plat exception authorization numbers 3-28-19A and B. Consider a request from Thomas and Jan Duffy, applicant landowners, for a preliminary and final plat for 2 residential lots on 20 acres, Duffy Farms, located at 27585 West 183rd Street, zoned RUR Rural District.
Jay?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig. This item is for preliminary and final plat for two lots on 20 acres, zoned RUR. It was brought before the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board on February 27th, 2019. That group recommended approval of this item. Staff is also recommending approval. There are 2 plat exceptions here to allow the existing structures to comply with the plat as it's proposed.
Okay, questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leipzig, just looking at the map, it seems like an odd reconfiguration. I mean, that's not an issue in any way?
No, Commissioner, the plat was drawn that way because of the buildings that are associated with the subject properties. It does seem odd, but it's actually, and there again, I'm not an engineer, but because of the straight parallel lines and the or perpendicular lines, it's fine in terms of, it gets complicated when you have diagonal lines on a plat.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, this is a planning item, will remain on action. Next item.
Item number 5, application number NW-PP/FP-3434LE. Consider a request from Phelps Engineering Incorporated, applicant, and Tescott Investments, Scott Cooper, landowner, for a preliminary and final plat approval for 1 lot on approximately 3 acres to be known as Tescott in Section 34, Township 13, Range 22, Johnson County, located at 31825 West 135th Street.
As I recall, this is the second time before us, and I understand that there have, as far as access, that was the big question. There have been some things that have been agreed to. Can you enlighten us?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig, Planning Director. This item was before you the second time, February 14th, and your direction was to remand it back to the Northwest Zoning Board. That group met on March the 18th. We have come up with a solution based upon part of the discussion that Mr. Peterson had mentioned the applicant's attorney during our during that February 14th meeting. which essentially allows a permanent easement to be in place for if the parcels around the subject property, the Tescott, which is a 3-acre parcel, if those parcels should develop, access will be provided. It also adds an additional provision for a benefit district, the creation of a benefit district that Tescott would be a part of if one is created.
Let me ask you this, some of the concern was that this is an unusual access issue, and but the agreement that's in place does not place any obligation on the county in the future, is that right?
That is correct, sir. There's no further monetary commitment on behalf of the county to resolve the issue. It's strictly between the property owners and the applicant's attorney, as well as the county legal staff has approved the agreement and the provisions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leipzig, you've mentioned a benefit district. What is that, and what does that have to do with this?
This basically is very similar to a wastewater benefit district where you have a road
You said
that
the
would be
magic term.
constructed.
Okay.
It's kind of the same provision to provide that access in the
thank you.
future.
Well, again, this is a planning item, will remain on action. Next item.
Item number 6, consider authorizing a contract with Axon Enterprises Incorporated and approving an expenditure in the amount of $222,588 for the purchase and installation of sheriff's in-vehicle camera systems.
Good morning, Tom Dugan with the Sheriff's Office. This is a request to enter into a contract with Axon Enterprise to replace our vehicle cameras. The cost is $220,588 for the first year. We're expecting to use our existing budget to pay for that. We did put in a request for additional resources for 2020 and future years in the amount of $125,388 to pay for the ongoing contractual cost. We're in a situation now where the equipment that we're currently using is DVD equipment. It's obsolete equipment. If we wanted to replace that equipment with like equipment, we couldn't. It's no longer made. The technology is obsolete. What we will be paying for in terms of the ongoing cost is they spread out the cost of the equipment over the 5 years, but most of the expense is use of their software and data management and data storage. And we do understand that if we're not funded for that ongoing cost, that we'll need to find a way to absorb it into our existing budget. And I can stand for any questions.
Questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would be supportive of putting this on consent, but I'd like to ask Mr. Dugan before next week to visit with me. I'd like to understand the cost comparison analysis that was done and why only one other vendor was looked at versus a more robust comparison, and we can discuss that offline.
Okay. I would just point out that we started with functionality. Would the equipment that was available to us work for us? And we eliminated other vendors based on trying out that equipment. So we field tested 5 units before we got cost info.
Ms. Hanslick.
Yes, I wanted to ask, either you can answer it now or if you want to talk to me later. I'm just interested in knowing, does this replace the system across the board, or is it just part of the system? And how many units are we looking at?
We would be replacing the equipment across the board for several reasons. The biggest reason is that it's not a great practice to have your evidence stored in a bunch of different systems. We want to have all of our evidence in the same system.
Okay, thank you.
Consent?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so noted. We do have one item which I'm going to ask we add to our agenda review. Mr. Jarrett, if you could give us a very brief.
Yes, in July of the last year, we awarded a contract for our financial advisor to Springsteads Incorporated, and they're currently our financial advisor. We've been advised that they are merging with an accounting firm. Under our contract, we need to consent to that. We are told the same advisors, the same team that has worked with us will continue to work with us. It's simply a change in their corporate structure, and the contract requires a consent from the board. And so we've put an item on the agenda which consents to the assignment of our contract and to that merger so that they can continue to provide the services.
Okay, questions? All right, so do I hear a motion to add? Mr. Allen?
I'd move to put this item on next week's consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to put this item on next week's consent agenda. Any further comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Hanslick?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert?
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Are there any other items?
No, sir.
If not, we are adjourned, and we'll begin our study session as soon as we can gather in room 202, 204 of this building. Thank you all.